Well, hi, everybody. It's another Conversations with, and I'm Dick Vaughn, and I am delighted to have some ladies with me today. And we're going to be talking about education, and especially as we move through what's going on in our country, we have a real issue with education. So we really have a lot to talk about. With me is Josie and Diane, and they're from Trinity Catholic Academy, and that's in Southbridge.
Southbridge, correct.
And you've been with them a long time, Josie.
I have been there a total of 25 years, actually. This is my 25th year. I started teaching there as a social studies teacher and whatever else I needed, I was needed for. And 8 years ago, I became principal.
Wow.
This is my 8th year as principal, and I have to say that each year has gotten better than the last. It's been a real honor and a privilege to be
Well, you know, one of the things that we're hearing, especially in Boston, is that the Catholic schools, which are back in class, there's been no problems with the COVID, and it's been working very well. And so that is an interesting situation.
It is, actually, and on 3 separate occasions, Governor Baker has actually praised the private and Catholic schools specifically for being able to open in person without having too many problems.
Yeah.
And we've really made it happen.
Well, that's incredible. So let's talk about Trinity Catholic Academy, and for instance, why should somebody send their child? Because the kids probably won't make the decision, mom and dad will. But why should somebody send their child to, for instance, Trinity Catholic Academy?
To Trinity. Well, the primary reason we exist, Dick, is to spread the word of God. That's the primary reason that a Catholic school exists. And if a set of parents want their children in a faith-filled environment, in a place where the whole child is taken into consideration, not just their academic growth, but their personal growth, emotional growth, their spiritual growth, this is the place for them. And with having a very favorable teacher-to-student ratio in our classrooms, the kids get a lot of personalized attention, a lot of communication with parents. It truly is a partnership between the school and the parents when they bring them to us. You know, that large classroom where the kids are going to get lost is not necessarily the case. And especially because of this pandemic, we've needed to limit our classes to 15 students so that we can physically distance them properly at all times. And with just a maximum of 15 students in the classroom, the teacher gets to know those children get to know the teacher, and the parents are very, very satisfied with what we have to offer.
Well, you know, you just mentioned something, and as you were talking, it dawns on me. Not only that, but when you get 15 kids in your class, you become like a family. The kids really get to know each other.
They do.
You know, and in a small environment like that, the chances of somebody being a bully, because sometimes kids can be cruel, those things get eliminated right off the top because of the limited size and the numbers in the class, and even from a teacher ratio. She or he then has better control over that whole environment.
Absolutely.
You put 25 or 30 kids in the class, and one person is trying to do something, and if they have to help one person, then you got 29 ready to jump out the window.
This is true. This
You know?
is true. Back in the day, we had to hold it to 25. Our max was 25
Yeah.
children. But things have changed.
Yeah.
And even 25 students would be quite a class these days.
Yeah, that'd be a good challenge.
Yes, it would be.
You know, but I think the thing that you mentioned is especially young people. One of the things that I think is one of our sadnesses is that the young kids today don't have faith. They don't learn faith and hope and caring and loving. They grow up, quote, on their own, you know, make my own way. And you mentioned the Catholic education, and it really is, it comes down to faith. They learn that ingredient that if it's missing, they lose a lot. And I, you know, I can't say enough for that because, you know, we have a situation where I go to church. We have over 500 kids in our CCD programs.
Wow.
That's great.
And it's unbelievable. And I know I've been at the Chancery and talked to the bishop and Father Reedy, and they marvel at the fact that at our little church, we have that many young kids involved.
Yeah.
You know, and it's so important. I mean, for kids to grow up and learn faith.
The foundation years are very important to all children, no matter where they go. So if they're not getting it from home and they think, you know, that a school such as Trinity Catholic Academy can help support that effort, it definitely is a plus.
Right.
Trinity is a school of Catholic, of traditional values and Catholic formation and academic excellence that has really started 150 years ago, was the first Catholic education class that started in Southbridge. So
Really?
we are trying to
150
continue
years?
150.
this legacy through the town
Wow.
of Southbridge.
Yes.
That's-
150 years.
This past
And
2020.
at one time there was 3 of them, wasn't there?
That's true.
It was
There
Sacred
were
Heart, Notre Dame,
And St.
and
Mary's.
Trinity.
correct.
St.
Well,
Mary's.
not Trinity. It was St. Mary's.
St.
Right,
Mary.
and they
It was-
became Trinity.
Yeah.
It became Trinity because, well, obviously the word Trinity means
Yeah.
3, and 3 schools merged into one, so it was
Yeah.
named Trinity Catholic Academy. And we're the last vestige of it in Southbridge, but
Yeah.
we're doing great.
Well,
Kids are wonderful.
What's it? How many grades are there?
We go from preschool to grade 8.
Wow.
Yeah.
No, when you say preschool, is that kindergarten?
No,
What we call
preschool is
kin-
the 4-year-olds.
That's before kindergarten.
Before kindergarten, yes.
Wow.
Yeah. All in one building.
That's fabulous.
And what's beautiful about having all of those grades in there is that some of the older kids partner or buddy with the younger ones. So, for instance, our 3rd graders, and I'm going to say this under normal circumstances and not
Yeah.
pandemic
Yeah.
circumstances, but under normal circumstances, our 3rd graders buddy with the preschool. And they read stories to them, they help them with projects, things like that. Our 8th
By the way, you
graders.
can't buy that.
You can't buy it, no.
It's a great
There's no
mentoring
price for that.
system that she has.
When you
It
teach
really
a kid
is.
who's now 8, right? 3rd grade, they'd be 8.
Yeah.
All right, you take a kid 8 years old, and you let that kid work with somebody who's 4, and read to them, or work with them, or help them. Do you know the lesson that kid just got?
Oh, it's such a sense of satisfaction for
Yeah.
them. Yeah. And the little ones really look up to them. Our 8th graders buddy with the kindergartners, and if we were able to go to Mass
Yeah.
each week as we normally did, they would go together so the
Yeah.
8th graders can help teach the younger ones, the kindergartners, what to do in church. And our 7th graders buddy with the 1st grade and would do the same.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, that's not happening. They're still buddies.
yeah,
And our teachers have been incredibly creative in figuring out how they can do some little activities
Yeah.
without being
Causing
so
a
close,
problem, yeah.
without causing the problems and still staying within the guidelines that we need to follow.
wow, that's, you know, when you hear stories like that, you just should sit back and say, oh, okay, how come they're not, there's a line out front trying to get in? Because you couldn't pay for that. You can't buy that.
Yeah.
You know,
well, I have to say this sometimes. Sometimes tuition, having to pay tuition to a
Yeah.
private school can be a bit of a roadblock,
Yeah.
a deterrent for people. At other times, it's that they're just not aware that the school is there. You wouldn't believe how many times I hear that. Even though they've lived in the area, they've grown up here, they just don't know that the school is there. As much as Diane has us in the newspaper as our advancement person, on the internet, on Facebook and everything, there are still those people who don't know that we're there. And for others,
look, there are people who don't know who the president is. So, you know,
Could be worse, right?
it could be worse. No, you know, it's funny you say that. I remember growing up, when I had 5 kids, And when the kids were growing up, at supper especially, because my father and mother did it for us, and I was involved in all kinds of things. And in the day, Ted Kennedy's been at the house, Governor Dukakis has been at the house, John Kerry is at the house, et cetera, because I was involved in all kinds of things. But when my kids were growing up, I would sit at night at dinner, and they had to know who's your congressman, who's your senator, who's the governor, and they'd at first grouse, oh, Dad, it's important that you know those things, and a lot of that's missing today, now remember, when I grew up, mothers didn't work. Mothers stayed home and took care of the house and took care of the kids, and Daddy worked.
Yep.
So, I tell stories. We'd come home from school, and my mother would have Toll House cookies ready for us, and milk, and the minute we got home from school.
So did mine.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's how it was. And now, moms and dads are both working just to get by. And so the poor kids come home, and they're on their own until 5 o'clock, 4:30, or whatever. So it's not the same world. And that's why an education like the one that you provide can be so vital for these kids.
It's a little bit of a hidden gem in Southbridge, even though Catholic education has been around for so long.
Yeah.
It is
Well,
really a
not only
vital
that,
item.
but today, with the need to go to college, to further your education, coming out of a setting like yours,
Oh, absolutely.
they're prepared. They've learned how to study.
For sure.
I tell stories today to people about my experience, and I went to the nuns, and until you get whacked with those beads,
I never got whacked.
We don't do that.
sister. Oh, I know.
No.
I had a
Back in the day, I
fourth
think,
grade.
but
Fourth
not
grade.
before
My
me.
fourth grade teacher was Sister Anestis, and most of the teachers I had earlier were young. Sister Mary Bennett, Sister Mary Claire. They were young, and they were great. Well, Sister Anestis, one of the older ladies, and we had her in the fourth grade. Now, I must be honest. We learned. You had no choice. You learned. But if you acted up or you bothered, and when I say it sounds terrible, but she never hurt you. She'd come down and they had the beads on, around their waist, and they hung down. And if she saw you talking to somebody or busybody, she'd come up behind you and you'd get a little whip like that. You'd sit right
Just
up
a
there.
reminder, huh? A little reminder.
A little reminder to pay attention. But again, and my mother used to say to us, the thing you learned was discipline. And
do get that.
and boy, you learn discipline.
Well, there's discipline, there's consideration for other people. Just yesterday, actually, I was covering for a teacher, and I had the fourth graders, and I read them a lovely book that's called Babushka. And it's a story about a little old lady who was sad, and she heard about this new baby king who had been born and sets out to go visit him. And we were talking about the transformation that the woman went through from the beginning of the story to the end of the story. And they were the ones who tell me that she exercised sympathy and empathy.
They brought it up.
They brought it up. They brought it up. So that speaks to the fact that with
A fourth grader
A
even
fourth
knew
grader.
the word empathy.
yes, we talked about the empathy. And when you can hear that out of a fourth grader, you know that you've done something right
Yeah.
to bring them up, so to speak, from preschool.
Yeah.
And the 6 years is now 6 years that they've been within the school.
Yeah.
And we really do help raise them
Well,
at
not only
Trinity.
that, but you think about it. But by the time they're in the third or fourth or fifth grade, them like they're your kids.
We sure do.
You know what think about that. And-
Those kids as well. I am a product of
Yeah.
Southbridge Catholic Schools from first
Yeah.
grade to 12th grade as
Yeah.
well. You end up creating relationships currently and
Oh, yeah.
in my past
Yeah.
that you still have at my age in my 60s that I had in first grade.
Yeah.
And it happens still today.
Yeah, well, we because when I went to high school, I graduated in 1953, so I'm old. And we had a school, I went to, it was Malden High School. And in those days, we had a headmaster. We didn't have a principal. We had a headmaster. We had a senior class master, junior class master, sophomore class master, and we had a dean of the girls. And you had to wear a shirt and a tie. And if you forgot your tie, not a problem, because the girls made our school colors were navy blue and gold. And we had we had more than one. But you'd go down to the office and Mr. Matthews, who was the headmaster, would give you this huge bow tie that was navy blue with yellow polka dots. And
got
you
to
wore
wear
that.
You
You
didn't
wore
forget
that.
it a second time, did you?
You never forgot your tie again, ever.
You were special that day.
Yeah, and the girls, nylon blouses were big back then. And if the girls wore a nylon blouse without a sweater or a little jacket over it, down they went. And we had these delightful navy blue vests with big yellow polka dots on them that they would let you borrow for the day. And the other thing, if you got kicked out of class or mouthed off, you went to Mr. Matthews. He'd never raise his voice. And he'd look at you and say, now look, here's the deal. You're going to go home now. So you get your books and you're going to go home. And when you come back tomorrow morning, you bring your mother and your father with you. Now you're going to tell your father that in order for you to get back into school, he's got to go too. So he's going to either be late for work or have to miss work.
Yep.
All right? And that's how you get back to school. Believe me, you only got kicked out once. And you never did it again.
Didn't happen a second time.
Didn't happen. I mean, and they were great lessons. You know, and to your point, we just had our 65th reunion. And there was 374 of us who graduated.
Wow.
There were 70 of us there. And we're
That's
still
wonderful.
And we're still like
great.
fools.
Yep.
Now, and the amazing thing, on the day we were getting ready for graduation, Laura Pearl was our class advisor, and she called us all in and said, I want you to, before you go out onto graduation field today, I want you to all look at each other, and especially those of you who are buddies and friends, and give each other a hug, because I'm going to tell you something. 50% of you will never see each other again. We thought she was crazy. She was right.
Yeah, she is right.
And so going back to what you're talking about, that is just so vital.
Well, there are students, past students we've had who have remained friends for the longest time. And I have to tell you that one of the greatest satisfactions that we prove as educators is when they come back and they bring their children to us. And some of them bring their grandchildren
Yes.
to us. And it becomes an intergenerational entity for them.
Right.
You know, it's a tradition, a family tradition. They invite us to their weddings. They invite
Yeah.
us to different things. They keep us up on whatever is happening in their life. And it is absolutely delightful to know that we have had even a small part in the development of that wonderful individual. You know, it's really awesome.
Several of my classmates who are now grandparents to the current students.
Yeah.
And so I still know who the
Who they are.
family members are and all that.
Yeah.
We had our, 45th class reunion in 2019, right before all this pandemic thing. We had a class of 71, and we had 35 people attend that
Yeah.
class reunion.
That was great.
Yeah.
It's nice.
That was great. No, you started talking about reading, and when I had the radio station over in Southbridge for 7 or 8 years, every year I used to get invited toward the end of the year to go read to the kids
Oh, nice, yeah.
at the Charlton Street School.
Sure.
I used to,
Reading
and there's one
day.
up on West Street, and I used to go and read. And there was a great teacher, I can't think of his name, who always called me and said, "Will you come and read?" And I happened to be a mummer. Now, I don't know if you know who the
Yeah,
mummers are,
sure.
but we played it, it was 3 or 4 years ago. We were over in Southbridge for the anniversary.
Yeah.
We were there 50 years ago in 1966.
I remember that one.
Yeah, I was there for that. That's when we wore the big feathers and
Yeah.
so forth. But the point is, so I have about 40 or 50 costumes because every year we get brand new
Oh,
costumes.
my.
And
Even
I have
still?
about 40 or 50 of them in my cellar.
Wow.
Oh, my
And so,
God.
depending on what they asked me to read, there was 3 or 4 times that I'd put on my costume
Oh, fun.
and go to the school in a costume
Oh, you'll have to ask.
and then read to the kids, you know. And of course, it would be like I'd walk in and the teacher would almost fall over, you know, because who's this nut coming in here? You know.
Good attention, though, right?
One of the ones that I wore was, we did a thing called Hail Caesar. We did I was a big Roman god, and we had the armor and we had the big capes and the helmets with all the feathers
Yep.
on them. So I was reading a story about something about the Romans, and I walked in with that on. Well, of course the kids go crazy. So one kid has got his phone, wants to have a picture taken. So before I left that day, the poor teacher was taking pictures of me and every kid in the classroom.
That's fun.
But
That's
but
all
it was a great. I mean, I think I got more out of it
Sure.
than the kids did.
Yep.
I mean,
Well, I
I got
think you
such a
both
kick out of
did.
that, and of course, you know, I'm an actor. I do this for a living, so when I didn't just read the book, you know, I changed my voice. I was very animated, so I'd have the kids, you know, sitting on the edge of that chair, and when I left, the teacher would say, "Will you come back again?" You know?
Well, post-pandemic, it's a date.
Yeah,
Okay.
really.
How
I think
how's
you got
that?
a plan on that.
Well, no,
I want to know when
Absolutely.
so I can take pictures.
Yeah, you would take pictures. But the thing is that, you know, the thing I'm meaning is that if more people would pay attention to the kids in school and do little things like that, you know, and give them themselves, just volunteer to go in and help. And as I said to you, I would come out of there and I'd go home and tell my wife, and I'd tell her, and I had her rolling on the floor.
Yeah.
You know, and she'd say, "You had a good time, didn't you?"
Yeah.
I said, "Jen, it was the best half hour I've spent all week." I
Well,
said, "These kids were great." You know?
Previous to this pandemic, we did have people come in, and we have Catholic Schools Week coming up at the end of the month. And we normally plan wonderful activities, something every single day. And community readers in the past has been something that
Yeah.
we have liked to do, you know, having people in. But of course, right now,
can't do
we're not
Well, maybe
able
we can
to
do a virtual
that.
setup. Maybe we can think
Well,
about
we'll
that.
see. We'll see
No,
what
but I
we
mean,
can
but
do.
but the thing is that in this whole concept, I mean, if people are listening and watching today, you know, and you've got to, especially, you know, I know it sounds like it's punishment, but it's not, because I remember growing up, every once in a while, we'd get a kid to come to our class with the nuns that basically the parents yanked them out of the public school and put them with the nuns because the kid was not doing well in the public setup. And so I don't mean it to sound like a punishment, but those kids would come in and you know, they were hostile at first. You know, a week later, they were part of the team. They
Well,
were
let me
part of
tell
the
you.
game. And
Yeah.
it was amazing. You'd see the transition in this kid.
Sure. There are different children that respond differently to different dynamics.
Yeah.
And sometimes the
Yeah.
Catholic school setting is a great positive for many of them.
Well, because, and I think it goes back to discipline. You know, there's a and it's probably responsibility more than discipline. I found that when I went there was a responsibility. You had to be there on time. You had to do what you were told. You didn't give them any grief. You did what you're supposed to do. And if you were struggling, they helped you. If you came back with your homework and it wasn't exactly right, then that nun would sit down with you, or that teacher would sit down and help you figure it out.
Yeah.
And that's learning, you know.
Our teachers sacrifice a lot of time, whether it's recess time or it's after school. They hold regular extra help sessions because they know not everybody is a genius at this or that, you know. And the transformation that you were talking about just a moment ago happens all the time. There may be students who are coming from a different educational setting who are not doing well there because they're in with people who are not in their best interest, let's say. And mom and dad bring them to us and say, you know, we need a different environment for them. Well, they may try something at first, but then discover that everybody else around them, their new peers, have been brought up in this environment,
Yeah.
and it's not going to fly
No,
with
that
them.
doesn't work here. No.
It doesn't fly with them. Or academically speaking, maybe they're not doing as well
Yeah.
because they haven't gotten the attention that they need, and they do get it with us, and the transformation is incredible.
Well, you
It
know,
really is.
I go back to my own high school, and I shared some of the things with you. Well, we had a discipline operation, and you did what you were told to do, and if you didn't, you were punished. Well, we would get a kid from another school system their family moved to Malden, and the kid would come in, and he'd be a smart aleck, and that'd last about an hour and a half, you know, and the rest of us would bring him right under control. You know, that's not how it works here, pal. You know,
Yeah.
we don't do that here.
We kind of say that they take them under their wing
Yeah,
and just help them to acclimate
Yeah.
and acculturate,
yeah,
and that's really important.
yeah. It is. It's a culture, and
It
you
is.
and you have to learn it, and you either get in it, or you're on the outside looking in. You know, and
They learn pretty quickly.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So let's talk about going to Trinity. What is somebody who's watched this program, heard us chatting about it, how great it is? What if someone's sitting there saying, wow, maybe that's what Mary Lou needs, or that's what Johnny needs? What do? How do they go about that?
Pick up the phone and call us. Pick up the phone and call us. They can even go to our website, which is trinitycatholicacademy.org, and learn about us. Go through the website. It gives everybody a beautiful picture of what we're all about. There's even an inquiry that they can send to us by way of email through the website. But they can call us. We are not such a big operation that you have to be connected to too many people.
No.
My secretary picks up the phone. She shouts across the hall, Josie, it's for you.
Yeah.
I pick up the phone and we have a conversation.
Can I
It's
tell you
that
something?
easy.
I am so excited that you just said that. One of the things that drives me crazy, have you ever tried to call somebody?
Oh, yeah.
Nobody answers the phone anymore.
It's all electronic.
No, we answer
I
the
tried to
phone.
call one of the banks the other day, and the phone rang and rang, and the lady comes on. If you know the party you're calling, push this number. If you can sing the national anthem, push this number.
Yeah.
You know, all I wanted to do was ask a simple question, and I could not get a human being to answer my question.
Yeah. No, she picks up the phone, or I
Good.
pick up the phone.
Yeah.
Depends on who's
there.
who happens to be free, or if she's on the other line, I pick it up. And
And I'm sure if they want to go and look at the school, they're welcome to do that.
they make an appointment with me. We come in, and right now, mask and hand sanitizer
Yeah.
is mandatory in
Yeah.
order to come through the door. And we have a conversation. I show them around. They see all the classrooms. I really do prefer for them to come in during the day so that they can see kids
See.
in seats.
Yep.
And see what it's like when I walk into the room. Those children have been taught that when an adult comes into the room, they stand and they greet them.
It's a
Do you
discipline.
still do that?
Oh, yes. Good morning, Mrs. Sita.
I gotta tell you.
Absolutely.
I have to. When you said that,
Parents
my
fall
mouth-
over when they see
my
that.
mouth fell open, because I remember when I went to the nuns. If the Monsignor came, or any of the priests came over to the school, or any of the other nuns came in the room, you always stood up.
Oh, absolutely.
They stand up
Yeah.
and greet.
Yeah.
And if they don't know your name, they just say good morning. Or good afternoon, or
Yeah.
whatever it
It
happens
goes
to
back.
be.
It goes back to the discipline, and responsibility. That's a responsibility. Wow, folks, that says it all. That alone says it all. You got to call Josie.
Yeah, we're very, very proud of our school. It is, as Diane was saying, it's a hidden gem. One of our board members referred to it as that when she joined our board. She said, this is a hidden gem. And we are doing everything we can to promote the school. We're here today. Diane puts us out in the newspaper and on
Fabulous.
Facebook and different places. But there aren't enough venues for us to be able to share
We're
what
gonna,
we
we're gonna
have to
start today.
offer.
There you have it, folks. Make sure you give them a call. And that's another Conversations With. Thank you, ladies.
Oh, you're very, very
Thank you for
welcome.
having
Thank you
us.
for
It's
having
very
us.
nice afternoon.
Pleasure.
There you are. Thanks for watching.